and it's new car day in GTA Online with what I think is the last of the drip feed from the Agents of Sabotage DLC, and that's the Cockett D5. So this is available from Legendary Motorsports for 1.7 million, so it's not a cheap car. It does come with a lock-on jammer, or you can put a lock-on jammer on it. There's no other Imani tech and there's no HSW. So that's an interesting choice, considering that HSW, I believe, is launched for PC today. I haven't seen anything about that. I understand that's happening. So let's have a look at this car. What do we think? Well, I've got to say, to start with, it's a good-looking thing. It's certainly not an ugly car. It's really nicely put together. I think we can officially say that Rockstar have just given up on copyright. They just don't care anymore. They're just doing whatever they want. They'll copy whatever they want. It's exactly right. The proportions are right. The back end in particular looks incredible, and the whole thing is just really nicely put together. It is a very pretty car, but does it drive as well as it looks? Well, to start with, we'll go to the Circuit of the Americas, which is another one of Rhino's circuits, and this is a really technical circuit. So this will highlight the flaws in this car, if there are any. And unfortunately there are some. First amongst which is the handling. I'm not going to say it's bad, but it has probably the dullest front end of any car I can remember driving. It's not that it understeers, it's just almost like the steering is connected to the front wheels by fax, and it makes it a little bit less enjoyable. It's got a reasonable amount of speed, but it doesn't feel particularly powerful. It's one of those cars that seems to build speed, so before you know it, you're actually going quite quick, but it doesn't feel like you got there particularly quickly. So another important thing for this has got to be the customization. Now, I had a very specific idea of what I wanted to do with this car when I got it, and yes, I know it's the wrong version, but I wanted to do it anyway, and it's this. And I couldn't, so I'm gutted. So let's have a look at the rest of the customization. In some ways it's not bad. There's a decent selection of bonnets. The strange bits come to the front and rear splitters and the skirts, which so many of them, just like the exhaust as well, actually, they look the same, or you can't really see them. There's hardly any point putting most of them on. So I didn't put most of them on because they didn't really make a huge amount of difference. And that is a little bit lackluster when it comes to the customization. There are some decent spoiler options, but none of them really work for what I want to do. So maybe I'll go back and put one on, see if that improves the handling. Wheel wise, the closest I could get to the Corvette style wheels from this sort of era is the Cognoscenti wheels from the SUV category, which is something people often forget that you can do, is put the SUV wheels on a normal car, and it gives you some quite nice options, and they tend to be a bit bigger, so if you really want to put massive wheels on, the SUV option is a really good shout. So this is what we've ended up with for the customization, and it does look good. And one thing I will say about this car is you absolutely must upgrade it. I took this thing out as soon as I got it delivered. I took it out for a spin unmodified, and I was going to do a lap in it unmodified, but I just couldn't bring myself to do it because, my god, this thing is slow and awful when it's not upgraded. In particular, the transmission, the shifting is so slow. You've got time, and you know, obviously being British, I'm obsessed with tea. You've got time to make a cup of tea between each gear change. It's that bad. But luckily, the upgrades do seem to sort that out quite nicely. And with it fully upgraded, it feels reasonably quick. It's got a nice sharp shift. I've got to say, whilst it's a good looking car and it's not particularly slow, it's not blowing my socks off, this one, I'm afraid. After the job they did with the Cosy, and yeah, nice shot, guy. After the job they did with the Cosworth, I was really hoping they would be just as respectful with the Corvette and do just another superb job. And yeah, with the looks they haven't, but with the drive, it just... I mean, I've never driven one of these Corvettes. Maybe they are a bit rubbish in real life, because that's what this is in the game. It's certainly not slow, and it's certainly not the worst car, but it's not setting my world on fire. So let's have a look at the top speed. And this is where the news gets a little bit better. In fact, it gets quite a lot better. You can't really tell when you're driving the car how quick you're going. Yes, you can look in the car and look at the speedo, but they're ridiculously inaccurate. But you get a sense of how quick you're going. And it does feel like the top speed on this straight mile stretch is pretty good. And as we go under the finish line, 29.03 with a top speed of 123.6 miles an hour, that is pretty good for a non-HSW car. I still don't understand why they're still adding non-HSW cars in the game, especially when HSW is either coming to PC or is on PC at the point of this video, but that's for people above my pay grade to decide. So it's time for final thoughts and review. What do I think? Well, at 1.7 million, this is not a cheap car. It's not horrifically expensive, but in terms of speed, it doesn't really feel any quicker than the Lost Speed Uranus, and that's significantly cheaper, and arguably, well, in my view anyway, significantly cooler. Don't get me wrong, this is a cool car, and it's a good looking car. It's a very good looking car, in fact. But for 1.7 million, bearing in mind if you want to put the lock-on jammer on there as well, that's going to cost you another few £100. I'll be honest, I haven't put it on this one because I'm not entirely sure I'm going to use it that much, because it's just around the streets and around the city. That dull front end makes it not enjoyable to drive, which is a shame, because a car like this should be fun. And whilst it is gorgeous, whilst it's a decent addition, it's certainly not one of the best Cockettes in the game. In fact, the recently launched D1, I would say, is a better bet for your money. So here's the time it did, and it did do a really decent time. So an 8:50 is not bad at all, and it wasn't a particularly clean lap, so you could probably get this down to about 8:40. So it's definitely not a slow car. That's going to put it in a respectable place on the leaderboard, but for nearly 2 million, it really should be in a respectable place on the leaderboard. So for my money, this one, if you love Corvettes, you'll love this. If you don't love Corvettes, I would say save your money. So I hope you found that useful, and I'll see you in the next one.